people up and they figure, okay, now you're going to provide a bunch of information and, we're going to go back and forth and, we're going to spend the next 2 years talking about trial and then eventually we'll get to trial. When the reality is they shouldn't bring an indictment before a grand jury until they essentially have a case that's ready to try, right? But custom has made it to where we don't do that. And by acquiescing and by sleeping on our rights and tolling the Speedy Trial Act every single time we go into courtrooms, it's created a scenario where they don't have an expectation that they need put on a trial in a speedy manner. In fact, it's very much the opposite. Judges and attorneys will tell you that the longer we take, the better. I would question that. Right? I would question if, for example...
Of course you would question it if you're the one sitting in jail.
But let's see, is that better?
Exactly, and it's mind-baffling to me, right? When a lot of the January 6ers were arrested, the prosecution was asking for universal delays based on fact that discovery had not been processed. Well, if you had enough information to go to a grand jury to indict for a crime, you should have enough information to go to a jury. What are you waiting for additional discovery for? Does that make sense? But, again, people, and I'm not criticizing anybody who did it. I did it, right? Because this is the custom that we've created. I slept on my rights in the very beginning, and so it created this situation. And this is just an example of many, many things. There's a lot of people who don't exercise their right to testify, or they don't exercise their right to go to trial, or they don't exercise. You could just go on and on this list of things. And then, so on top of that, it creates custom. But then also, we have things like licensing. Right? When you look up the word licensing in a legal dictionary, you realize that it's permission to do something that is not normally lawful. So let's think about this. What are some common licenses? License to drive, license to get married, license to open a business, right? License to cut hair. All these things require licenses.
Hunt, fish, practice
Go ahead.
law. Hunt, fish,
Yep,
practice law. Stay in practice medicine, all these things. Yeah, all of it. And we talked about how it's so the government can get a piece of your money.
It's not just that the government can get a piece of your money, but they've converted it to a system where they have total control, right? Because they grant the license. And then you also I go a step further and I ask, what is it that a person is doing that's not lawful? If somebody's cutting hair, why is that not lawful that requires them to have a license?
Thank you, Jane.
You know what I mean? If I have a right to travel and the roads belong to the public right-of-way, why do I require a license to travel on the public right-of-way? There's all these kind of questions, and I don't really want to go too far down deep that rabbit hole, but these are real questions that you can ask yourself, and it's through inquiry that we find out the truth of all things. And so, I think it's something that we constantly need to be checking ourselves and not just assume that the system is benevolent, right? All governments throughout all time, this is not specifically against the United States, but all governments throughout all time bend towards tyranny and dictatorship. And the people of all times have wanted freedom and liberty. There's always a tug and pull that's going on. We need government because of our inability to be kind and pure-hearted and benevolent towards each other. And government restrains our evil, right? Society promotes our good, and there's always this tug and pull that goes back and forth. Well, it's always appropriate for we the people, the living people, the people who are subject to any government, to ask ourselves these kind of questions, right? I don't promote overthrowing the government, but I'm kind of one of those canaille type people, constant and never-ending improvement. There's no reason why we can't constantly improve the government, and because I'm a living person, I want the government to provide the maximum amount of freedom possible. It doesn't make sense to me, and I've participated in the program, so I know how it works. I don't understand why you need a permit, which is just a synonym for permission, to, for example, build a house, or a permit to build a deck on your property, or a permit to install a hot tub or a fireplace, right? Why do I have to ask permission from the government every time I want to improve my land? Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's in our words. It's in our words that we've kind of been deceived, and through custom, we've created an entire subsection of law that was never intended, right? It was never intended that we get this far down the road. Our founding fathers would be rolling over in their graves if we knew how much security we had sacrificed in the name of freedom, because now we have neither freedom nor security. You know what I mean? They would absolutely be devastated. And I say that as someone who spent, better part of my life studying what the founding fathers intended to leave for their children and their posterity. And when I look around at the current system, I don't think that they intended to leave us with the Federal Reserve. I don't think they intended to leave us with money that was not backed by gold and silver. I don't think they intended to leave us with a federal judicial system that would openly tell you in court that they only have the power the legislature prescribes. That makes it a legislative tribunal, right? But yet you're supposedly an Article 3 court. I don't think that they intended some of those things, right? But somehow we, the people, have allowed it through our acquiescence to happen. And so the only way for a solution is for us individually, each single individual person that's listening to this individual and that will hear this in the future or that you talk to in the future needs to make a decision to do something different, right? Gandhi taught us in a great way that you can choose how to shape your government and the people who control you by shopping local, right? Purchasing things with your eyes, your dollars, and your clicks. That's the currency of today. Your eyes, your dollars, and your clicks. What do you watch? What do you spend your money on? And where do you click your mouse button? That is what determines who gets the attention, who gets the flow of currency, who gets all that commercial energy, and whatever we put our energy into is what's going to grow. And so there's a website that was kind of my brainchild. I don't own it, but there's a website called dollarsvotelouder.com. And on that website, there's alternatives. There's alternatives to Amazon. There's alternatives to AT&T and Verizon. There's alternatives to different food companies that produce bad food. It lists through different companies that love freedom, want to promote a Republican form of democracy, and share our values. So, that's a resource that everybody can just start being conscientious of where you put your